All right. Welcome to our weekly webinar, and we're going to continue our journey through the different levels of sermon publishing, today focusing on full text sermon transcripts, something we've talked about before, but we're going to take a deeper dive today. So our agenda today, we'll go over just kind of orient ourselves to where we are. I'll go through a specific process for adding full text sermon transcripts, even if you don't produce a manuscript. And then we'll have some time for Q&A. These can be questions on sermon publishing in general, today's specific topic, or things we've talked about in previous weeks, or even things that were on the agenda for the next few weeks. Or it could just be about church outreach in general, or really anything you think that we or someone else on the meeting could help you with. Then there are a couple of free bonuses today. One of them is you can request a free full text sermon transcript, and then we also have a free bonus related to the Church Outreach Incubator that I'll share before the end of our time today. So let's dive in. So our goal of these webinars, which really we have planned for the next year, we will be taking breaks every so often, but we are just going through different proven methods of outreach to put the work of your church before the people of your community. And as I've mentioned before, this is not really anything novel. We work with primarily with Presbyterian and Reformed churches, and a lot of them are OPC churches. And of course, OPC has a probably a well-deserved reputation for being more conservative and not necessarily trying to be innovative. But these are things I pulled out. This is like directly from the outline of the OPC church planting manual. What they recommend to church planters in their manual for outreach is advertising, publishing newsletters, organizing and promoting public meetings, seminars, and conferences, and then distributing recordings and transcripts of sermons and teaching. So this is these are proven methods. They are methods that require work, but they are proven. They are effective. Advertising is just one of those things where it has just given changes in technology over the past few decades. It just looks different than what it did, say, 30 years ago, of course, or even 10 years ago. So what we're looking at specifically right now, and we'll continue on through the month of July, is sermon publishing. How do you get your sermons out to the widest possible audience online? And so we've looked at adding each new sermon recording on its own page, organizing the library by scripture book. Last week, we talked about configuring sermon podcast feeds. And then today we're looking at adding a full text transcript of a sermon. Next week, being that it's July 4th, we will not have a webinar, but we'll pick up again on July 11. And we're going to look at publishing on social media and even automating that publishing. And then the last 2 weeks are going to be focused on YouTube. Many, if not most churches are already using YouTube. And so when we get to this section, I'm basically going to assume that you're already recording some videos and putting them on YouTube. Although this will show you where to look about how you actually upload a YouTube video if you've never done that before. But really, we're going to be focusing on how do you actually fine-tune that process to maximize the awareness of those videos on YouTube through things like titling them well and adding a good description and putting in a customized video thumbnail and different things like that. And then we'll also look at optimizing your YouTube channel so that as people watch the YouTube videos, they are then directed to hello, is that Diane?
Sorry.
Okay, all right. If y'all wouldn't mind muting yourself, and then if you have a question, you can unmute yourself. All right, so that's where we're going. Any questions on that before I get into full text sermon publishing? All right, before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and publish our paste the links in the chat window. There's a lot of different things here. So I just pasted that into your chat. Let me just talk about what's there. So the first thing that's there in the links I just posted are some how-to guides. So if you click on those, you're going to see these. So one of them is for users of Advanced Sermons Pro. So if you have a website that was based off of the Goodwin starter site, so like Ike, that would be your church, for example. Or if you're just using the Advanced Sermons Pro plugin, like Ron and Arnie, like y'all's church has now, this would be the one that you would use. The other one is for if you're using a site based off of Ames, Baxter, Charnock, Flavel, or Spring. Some of the details are a little bit different, so that you would use this other how-to guide. But within these how-to guides, it basically it has a kind of a visual how-to guide of exactly what you click on, in this case, to add a sermon to the website on its own page. And you can just, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. We don't have any of those. Which of the guides should Word of Life Church use?
Yeah, the Advanced Sermons Pro, because you do have that installed on your site now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So you have those guides in, I have links to those. There's two free bonuses today. One is a free full text sermon transcript. You can just email support@5moretalents.com. It's on the screen here. Talk more about that as we get to that part. And then also we'll talk more about this, but we do have our kind of early access to our Church Outreach Incubator, which basically we have an offer that you can have the first month of the fees paid to 5 More Talents waived if you sign up by July 12th. So I'll go over more details of that at the end of the webinar. That's another offer to consider. And then there's links in there where how you can request support, and also book a meeting with Laura regarding any new services you might be interested in, or Holly regarding training and support for your website, or with me if you have questions about anything else. So let's dive in. All right, so the first thing is I'm going to show you how to use something called TurboScribe.ai to create a full text transcript. All right, so if you're one of those rare preachers that does write out a manuscript and just preaches from that, then maybe this is not applicable. So you could just paste that manuscript onto your sermon page. But my impression is that most pastors tend not to preach from a manuscript. So if you're in that boat, then this will be very helpful. So as some of you know, we've been working on sort of our own AI tool. But and we do actually have some plans to continue working on it in the coming months, but it's not quite ready for prime time on a high level. So what we're recommending that you consider is using this tool called TurboScribe.ai. So there is a free version of it you can try out that you can do up to 3 free transcripts per day. the unfortunate limitation that most churches would run into is that the free version only processes up to 30 minutes. So if your sermon is less than 30 minutes, good news, you can probably just get by with the free version. But if you preach longer than 30 minutes, then you would need to pay for this. But let me ask if there is, I have a sermon that I could plug into this, but does anybody have a just a recent sermon from your website you would like to volunteer? What?
Oh, I would. I had to unmute.
You would like to do one of yours,
I
Arnie?
can do one of mine, yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's so I guess we should grab from your sermon audio.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's do that. All right, so basically what we're looking for is the URL. Let's see what I'm going to do. So I'm going, what if we do this most recent one, Arnie? Is that one okay?
I guess it doesn't matter to me.
Okay. All right, so we're going to grab that one.
Actually, these some of these are just devotionals here.
Okay, which one would you like me to do?
So go down to a glimpse of God's glory.
Okay, let's do that one. All right, so we're just basically looking for a copy of the file, or there's a way to do a URL as well. So I'm just going to grab that one. And then what you do is you just, as I'm already logged into TurboScribe.ai, I'm going to click Transcribe Files. One of the nice features about TurboScribe is that it'll read in a file. It'll read in a YouTube video URL. So it actually inputs a lot more than just an MP3. So we'll let it upload for a moment. And then I'm going to click the button. There's different transcription modes. I just always recommend you use Whale, which is the most accurate. It's a little bit slower, but it still processes within a few minutes. I'm just going to click transcribe. And it's going to start going in the background. It's not instantaneous. So while that's processing, let's talk about, again, why do this? Well, of course, one, some people might actually like to read the transcript. But there's another reason, which is it's just another way that you can help Google to accurately label and promote the sermon to searches. I've showed these slides before, so I'm gonna, and most of you have seen them, but I'm just gonna go through them and I'm gonna highlight a few new things. So by adding a full text transcript, you can basically get a lot more traffic to your website over time than if you just publish the audio or video, or both. Adding the full text transcript dramatically increases traffic. So here we can see some side-by-side comparisons looking at a month of time. You know, you can get, we've seen, 9 times more traffic, or 10, or 54, or 15, 12, 5 times the visits, 17 times the visits. The church in this study, you don't have to be a big church to kind of see more traffic or be in a large city. Even if you're in a small town, like this church that's doing the full text sermon publishing in a town of 600, you can still get more website traffic. And this is looking at, these ones are looking at what it looks like over the course of 12 months. 50 times the visits. The one on the right is the full text sermon publishing versus one on the left is not full text. So just doing these comparisons, we've seen 50 times the visits, 48 times, 122 times, 4 times. This one, though, is a, one on the right is a small town of 600. with a solo pastor. The one on the left is in a city in California with 30 plus staff members. But even in this comparison, the solo pastor church in the small town still gets 4 times the traffic. Okay. And so disclaimer, this is not like an instantaneous strategy. If you're looking for an instantaneous overnight increase in your website traffic, then I would urge you to consider investing in some online ads. But if you're looking for a long-term strategy, this is a great strategy. It's the best one that I know of, is to simply add a full text sermon. So you can see that these dark blue bars is a church that did not publish the full text, and the light blue bars are the church that did publish the full text. And you can see it started out as lower traffic, but now it's increased to be dramatically more. And here's another view of it, is that you do need to be prepared to stick with the full text sermon publishing for basically at least 1.5 years before you're really going to notice a significant difference in your website traffic. But after 2 years, you could expect that your website traffic might be 3.5 times what it was when you started. After 3 years, 8 times, and after 4 years, it might be as much as 25 times more than what it is today. All right, so what are the ingredients to this? It's very simple. The main thing is just establishing a rhythm of publishing the full text every week over time. But there's a couple of little things. So here's an example from that church, which is doing the full text sermon publishing. These are like the actual keywords I just grabbed a few days ago. So one of the keywords that they are ranked basically number 1 for, you can see position is 1.1, is 1 John 1 verses 7 sermon. 1 John 1 verses 7 sermon. Sure enough, if you do a search for 1 John 1 verse 7 sermon, unionvillebpc.com shows up. And over the past 3 months, there's been 120 people that have searched for this, and they've gotten 23 clicks through to their website. So really the 2 things are could maybe separate this into 3 things, but the first one is the way that it's titled. Number 1, they included before the title, because sermon titles are people often try to be very clever with sermon titles. But if you're wanting things to be more visible, you need to be clear rather than clever. If you can be clear and clever, that's great. But if you just had to pick one, you should be clear, right? So the fact that this sermon is labeled sermon on 1 John 1 verses 3 through 7, and then it gives the sermon title, goes a long way to help it be properly recognized by Google as being relevant to that keyword. And the second thing you can see here, here's the beginning of their full text, and it probably doesn't hurt that they included the full sermon text in there. So that's maybe another little a little tip to try to include. So I see there's something in the chat. Okay, Ron, do you want to unmute yourself and ask that question? Or should I just read it?
Sure. Arnie has a lot on sermon audio, spanning back more than 15 years. So to get more visits, instead of going forward week by week and adding sermons as we go over 2 years or 3 years, can we fetch back 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, and add those full texts back there within 3 months, say? Would that help?
Yeah, I think it's again, this is out of all of the different things you can do to increase your website traffic, this is like the single most impactful thing over time that I'm aware of. You cannot expect immediate results, but yeah, I would expect that if you follow this recipe and you start building that out, it is going to take some time for you know, for Google to adjust to what's going on. There might be a few additional things that we could work with you on to make sure that Google is re-indexing those sermons. And I can't promise you that, you know, you would necessarily be able to fast track the results of year 4 after just 1 year. I don't know if that would happen or not, but over time, this Google loves this. The search engines love this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Again, if just to reiterate, like if you're looking for if you're ever in a situation where you're looking for, you know, getting visibility quickly, kind of overnight at the flip of a switch, you know, that's what online ads are really good at. Paid online ads. All right, so let's see how our transcript is. And it looks like it's done. So one of the things I really like about TurboScribe, and here we're going to transition into pasting the transcript into sermons and adding headings. All right, so let's see. So where were we? All right, yeah, we were here. So one of the nice things about TurboScribe is it has some additional logic in there where it tries to divide things into different. This one didn't. That's interesting. I've not seen that before. A lot of you can see it tried to start dividing them into paragraphs. I'm not sure why in this case it did not divide into paragraphs. Typically what you see is something more like this. I'm not sure what happened there. That's the first time I've seen that. So what you can do is download the text file. It gives you different formats. PDF, Word doc, but for what we're doing, the text file is good. Then you want to open it. Just in your text editor is fine. All right, and then let's see. Arnie and Ron, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do you want me to try to add this to your site as a draft?
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Okay. All right, so let me do that. Just bear with me one moment. So this is going to be using the, well, it doesn't, I mean, this is going to be using Advanced Sermons Pro plugin, but it's, since you're basically just using the standard WordPress content editor. So I'm going to go into sermons. All right, and click add new sermon. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, again, we're trying to just employ the recipe that we saw that's successful for the example church that we looked at. And so we're going to give it a title of Sermon on, and I need a reminder, Sermon on John 17 verses 1 through 5, correct?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Right, and then you can use a dash or colon or something like that. And we're going to call it A Glimpse of God's Glory. Oh, it's interesting how we duplicated that. Okay, so we have that. And then we're going to paste this here. Let's see. Okay. And I don't know why it didn't put in those, you know, this is interesting. Why did it put this in here? Classic. I don't want a classic paragraph. Let's see, transform, convert to blocks. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, so so that's, you could stop there. But the thing that I recommend doing that I think in most cases shouldn't take too much time, but would definitely be helpful is to add some headings. So is there a place, Ron or Arnie, where there's already like an outline or something that would maybe
Yeah,
indicate
on the
point there?
sermon audio page, I
Okay.
have an outline,
Okay, so
a
let's,
detailed outline of the sermon.
okay,
And I
so
was
let's
going to ask you if that might be, because it's mine's fairly detailed.
yeah.
It would it's not a, see, that's the outline.
Yeah. Oh, that is very detailed. Okay.
Is that enough to be what instead of
So yeah, this is so detailed that
that would save a lot of work.
yeah, this is so detailed that that you could use this.
I could just put your other title on the top of it, right?
Well,
Sermon on John 17:5
right,
on top.
exactly. Yeah. You could consider using this and pasting that. Let me close that. Pasting that directly into here instead of the transcript.
And it would work like a transcript as far as
Yeah, there's
Google's
basically what we're looking for is like, I don't know, at
just
least
words, right?
at least 1,000 words, right? I mean, you have enough here. This is basically a manuscript.
Yeah.
It's an extremely detailed outline. It's
Yes.
detailed enough that for the purpose of getting your website higher in the search rankings, it's detailed enough. But it makes a difference whether you what I see, it makes it, if you were just to attach, there is a way with the different sermon plugins where you can add sermon notes. You could still do that, but it seems like the search engines treat that differently, and it's not as effective just to attach that PDF.
Okay.
What's most effective in actually increasing the search visibility is actually to paste the content.
Yeah. So before I ever made a PDF, which I have it on Word before I put it on sermon audio, I should use that to stick into the website.
Yeah, paste it onto the sermon page on the website like this. Okay. So then I'm not going to do all of these because there's so many, but just to do maybe a couple of them. So all right, so it looks like the first point is note the correct uniqueness of the start of the prayer. So we could say, I'm guessing is that right? I'm just going to say it's right. Help me out here.
I'm looking for it.
Right here. We'll just say it's right here. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a different, I just type a / and it lets me choose a block. So I'm just going to choose a heading, and H2 is a good one. There's different levels. You don't want to use H1 because that's the page title. Page title uses H1. And the general rule is you only have one H1 per page, and that's the page title. So for these main points, we want to have the top level be heading 2. All right. And I would recommend if it makes sense, that you maybe just add the specific scripture references. That would be something that would be another clue to Google that this is on target for people looking for a sermon on this particular text. So that's what I'd recommend for the headings, is just add those headings and then include the scripture reference. If I know different preachers have different ways of organizing sermons, but if it makes sense to kind of just say, well, this point relates to verse 1, this point relates to verses 2 and 3, then definitely put that in there. All right. Just to maybe see if we can do one more example. Let's see. So our Roman numeral 2.
Yeah, there
There it
definitely
is.
should
Okay.
be.
All right. Okay, so I'm just going to take it, just for the sake of time, I'm just going to take a guess as to where this is. So
Search for 17.1.
Okay. Okay, it's right after Alexander, Caesar, and Charlemagne. So, and Book of Revelation.
There it is.
Yeah, so it's somewhere. Okay. Okay, again, just for the sake of time, I'm just gonna pick an arbitrary spot. I know that's not quite the right spot, but again, I'm just gonna put in a heading block. Oops, why is this not? It's being a little bit finicky. All right, my computer woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning. All right. All right, so there's, yeah, just kind of put in those, at least put in those main headings using those heading tags. That is something that is a form of semantic markup. It, like, to put something in a heading versus a paragraph means something to the search engine. It kind of helps the search engine form an outline of the different parts of what's in the document. All right. So obviously repeat that for as many different main points as there are. At this point, we'll save a draft. And let me stop there and see if there's any questions.
Daniel, I do have a.
Yes.
So regarding the Word of Life church website, Ron and I were in discussions about the menu, and there is a sermon library page. So did you want to go over where this is going to show up, like how it's going to show up with the Advanced Sermons Pro plugin, like how it will show up on the page? Shall we?
Yeah, let's just preview it. So here's what it looks like right now. It's not published yet. But here's what it looks like right now.
See how far they work.
And then yeah, so here's the sermons page. So it's saying no results because it's not been published yet. So does that help at all?
It does, and I do have a question for Ron while you're here, Ron. Do you want to leave that? If we publish that, shall we leave in the sermons menu up there, Daniel, where there's a drop down and there's most recent sermons, and then we were going to put back top 25 sermons, but it's still the sermon audio player under top 25 sermons as well. Should we leave that sermon library page there, Ron, so that these new sermons with transcripts can populate there?
I think that would be wise so that we can keep track of which ones we have applied the text to script and published as a web page.
Okay.
As a blog within our website.
Okay. Okay, then we'll just, I'll leave that as it is then. And if you want to make any changes, you can let us know. Okay.
Okay, now that will, you made it a point, Daniel, to categorize this as a blog. So this will be searched or evaluated by Google if it's a blog. Otherwise, it wouldn't be. Is that right?
No, I don't think it's, I don't think that's important, is that it be categorized as a blog.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it is true, I will say it is true that it this is a very like nitnoidy super technical point. It is true that the the example church website Unionville that is doing the full text sermon publishing, it is true that they happen to be posting them as blog posts. So they are using the posts rather than the sermons. But I don't know of any evidence that that is a decisive factor. And you're losing, it's going to just be more work to organize things, and you're missing out on a lot of helpful functionality of the sermons post type. All these different things that are in WordPress, they're technically a post, which is a blog post, and they're just kind of a blog post with extra stuff on it. So
Okay.
Anyway. All right, so let's get to the last point here, which is optimize the sermon for a popular keyword using Yoast SEO. All right, so so let's go back to this example and let's see where to go. Let me close some of the ones I don't need. Okay, here we go. All right, so this does require the Yoast SEO plugin to be installed. So in this case, it is. If it's not installed on your website, or if you can't see Yoast SEO on your site, just it's a free plugin. We're happy to install it for free at no additional charge to you. And so you go over here. Let's go back to that sermon we started on John 17, verse 1 through 5. All right, so so you need to start by selecting a focus key phrase here. So before I get into that, let me see, Ike, you're asking, would the transcript be pasted under the embed code when you put the sermon on the site? Basically, just like I'm showing in this example, you paste the transcript in the main editing area for the sermon. Does that help, Ike? I mean, feel free to unmute yourself if that is not clear.
Was that in a block immediately under the title?
Yes.
You put it in a block?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
So
it called the editor block?
Pardon me?
Is it called the editor block? What's it called? How do you recognize it?
It's going to be different whether you're using the block editor. Well, this is the block editor right here.
Okay.
So if you just literally click on the page and paste, it'll paste it in.
Okay.
It's really all you have to do. So Ike, help me understand your question.
So when I go to the add a new sermon page, the block says add title, then I add title, then I drop down to the next block and I just paste the embed code in there, adjust the size of the player, and then type out a summary of the sermon in that. And so would the transcript go in that same block just beneath the embed code, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because and that particular block lets me toggle between like a visual or a text, and I usually it defaults to text when I go to that, and that's typically how I do it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That's it.
Great. Okay. So back to the Yoast SEO. So we're going to select a focus key phrase. So in this case, I'm just going to say, I'm going to try this sermon on John 17 verses 1 through 5. Right. So as a general rule, that's what I would just recommend you do, is just use basically what you put in for the title as your focus key phrase. Just to take a moment and dive a little bit deeper into the rationale for that. And maybe some other possibilities you might want to consider for your focus key phrase. You want to select a focus key phrase that it needs to be relevant, but it should also be one that as many people as possible are searching for. So there's software tools you can pay for that will let you do this research, but you can also just use Google's autocomplete feature, and it will give you some clues. So for example, you can see sermon on John, this indicates that the most popular things are Sermon on John 15, Sermon on John 3, and Sermon on John 21. That's why Google is suggesting those. All right. So in this case, if we type in Sermon on John 17, you can actually see there Sermon on John 17, 1 through 5 is actually there in the list. All right. And there we go. I guess it doesn't include the colon because the colon, I think, maybe has some sort of special purpose in the Google search engine. But for the purpose of using this tool, it's fine to just include the colon in there. All right. So once you've put in your focus key phrase, then it gives you a red, yellow, a red, orange, or green marker. So the ideal scenario would be that you could get the SEO to a green and the readability to a green. This could become a major rabbit hole and may or may not be worth the time, but I just at least want to show you how this works, and some level of engagement with this tool, I think, has some value. So it gives you an SEO analysis, and it gives you some good things that you're doing. So it says, good job, you're using that key phrase in your title. It's not too long. You haven't used this on another page on your website. The text length contains 5,979 words. Good job. But then it's also saying there's some problems. Frankly, it would be difficult, I think, for the typical sermon to deal with all of these different things that it's highlighting, but it's not impossible. Okay, so let's just do one of them, meta description. Well, we're going to do two of them. So one is adding the key phrase in the introduction. You can click on these links and it will take you to the Yoast SEO website, and it'll explain, like, what does this mean? You can read all about it. You can learn about what all these different things mean. But if you just say let's do key phrase in the introduction. So this one's pretty easy to do. You can just say something like, I'm sure y'all are good wordsmiths. You can figure out a more creative way to do this. But if you just say something like, this is a sermon on John 17, verses 1 through 5. Or this is the transcript of a sermon. But this has that key phrase, sermon on John 17, verses 1 through 5. So it just reiterates it again. So now that goes into the good results. We're now including that, let's see, where is it? Now the key phrase is in the introduction. Okay, the next one is the meta description. So the meta description is, if you think about, let's just do a Google search for this. The sermon on John 17, verses 1 through 5. Okay, well, this is interesting. The first things that show up are video, which is why you should come back in July and when we talk about YouTube. But once we get past those, you can see here these other search results. And the meta description is related to what Google chooses to display below the title. All right, see these different little descriptions below the title. So there's many factors that go into what the search engine decides to put below the title, but one of them is what you put in the meta description. And you want to think about what is going to help people to decide whether they should click on this. So you could just, at least want to have something like this. This is a sermon on John 17, verse 1 through 5, focusing on Jesus high priestly prayer. Just give people a little summary, and anything that you can give in a sentence that would help people decide whether they should click on this is useful.
Daniel, for the meta description, I was going to say, yeah, you need to get it to the point where it's green at least. So you want to use enough words so that it gets green.
Okay, there we go. So it's that's about the right length right there. You can see it's at green. If you get it too long, then that's bad. But if it's too short, that's bad as well. All right, so now we have a meta description that includes our focus key phrase. And now you can see our number of problems are diminishing. The number of good results are increasing. So you don't have to eliminate all of the problems typically. But in order to get this up to a green SEO score, you need to eliminate more of the problems than what we've already done. And it is, frankly, it would be a challenge because some of these things are saying key phrase density, which would require you to keep repeating. This is a sermon on John 17 verses 1 through 5, which would not read very well. So even if you just did those couple of things in some capacity, you're at least getting it up to an orange, which is better than a red. So that's a step in the right direction.
Daniel, one more thing you could fairly easily do that would be another thing toward getting your SEO ranking into green is for an outbound link. You could use like a link to the scripture passage on like Bible.com or something, or Bible.org, whatever.
There you go.
Because that would give you an outbound link, which would also check off a box pretty easily.
Yeah, and if it's part of a series, you can add an internal link to the previous sermon in the series, the next sermon in the series. Both of those would help. So yeah.
So for the outbound link, I am curious, is that just above in the options that you have to type in the you can type in John 17, 1 through 5 up a little bit beyond this? I think there's a section that's within the sermon section. I'm not sure if that's
the
it.
scripture, like if you just type this in.
I'm not sure if that's it. I'm actually.
No, I don't think. Yeah, see, Yoast SEO is
reading that.
It doesn't actually. It's only aware of what you post, of what you put in.
It's like in the body of the text.
Yeah,
gotcha. Okay.
It doesn't analyze anything that you put in the sermon details.
Okay.
So yeah, there are other SEO tools that are like paid separate tools that will kind of analyze everything on the page and give you a different analysis. And it's not an exact science, but this is helpful to kind of think about the kinds of things that search engines care about. They're trying to deliver people relevant results for what they're searching for. And really, it's, again, if you have to choose between being clear and being clever, be clear. This is a sermon about John 17 verses 1 through 5. We know that actually a lot of people search for that. All right, so that is at least it gives you a place to start as far as optimizing the sermon for a popular keyword. So at this point, what I will do is I'll just click Save Draft. And that brings us to our question and answer time. So does anyone have any questions either about sermon publishing specifically, whether what we've been talking about today or podcasting we talked about last time, or organizing your sermon library, or maybe looking ahead to publishing on social media or YouTube? Or do you have any questions just about church outreach in general, advertising, promoting events, running a newsletter, or just any questions.
So, Daniel, did you click on Save Draft? I heard
Yes,
you
I
say
did.
that. Sir?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm logged in as a WP admin right now, but I can't see your work. Is that usual? That is, it doesn't show up in the sermon library, which is where I think we said to save it.
Yeah, it should be here under the sermon screen.
Is it possible that it's under the posts?
Well, we haven't published it yet, so it won't show up on the page yet, correct?
Yeah, it's not going to show. It's only going to show up here in the dashboard under sermons.
Yeah.
Right. I'm in the dashboard. I'm
So if you
logged in.
Yeah, so if you click on sermons, you should see it in this list. If
Sermon
not,
library.
if
Sermon
you click
library.
dashboard and sermons, and then all sermons.
Oh, okay. Dashboard and sermons. All right.
Yeah.
So when will it show up in the WP admin's rendering of Word of Life Church page?
Oh, like are you talking about on the front end of the site?
Yeah, right there.
Under
Sermon library.
the sermon library.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so you need to publish it.
But if I publish it, everybody in the world can see it.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's pretty typical that when I make other changes in the dashboard end, I come to this page and they show up there while I'm logged in as the admin.
Yeah, but since it's because it's a draft.
Uh-huh.
Because it's a draft, that's why it's not showing up under sermon library.
Okay, so how could I see it as if I was just a visitor?
Yeah, there you go.
Before I actually publish it.
Exactly. Yeah, so you go to preview.
Okay.
Click on preview, and that shows you this is what it looks like so far.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Super, thank you.
Great. All right. Okay, so let's talk about our free bonuses. So the first one is you can request a free transcript. We'll just you just need to provide us with a link to the sermon and just email it to support@5moretalents.com. We will generate it using our TurboScribe.ai subscription that we have, and we'll get it back to you. So your options for TurboScribe, you can look into buying a subscription for yourself, or if you're interested in what it might look like for, where you could pay us a service fee kind of on an ongoing basis to generate those for you. That's something else we could explore as well. But we're happy to generate a free transcript of a sermon that you provide just at your request. All right, now the Church Outreach Incubator. So we also have a special offer on this. So this is a service that is designed for churches where you're in a season of transformation. Maybe you are seeking to invite and see new members joining the church regularly, see visitors coming weekly. Maybe you're in a church revitalization season or something like that. If there's a mission work that is working towards becoming an organized church and installing their own elders and deacons, this could be helpful for a church in that situation as well. So it's a service where we come alongside the church for 12 to 15 months and we help you develop ministries of outreach and evangelism. So our official launch of this service is going to be at the beginning of 2025. And you can see here, this is a service where one way to think about it is essentially it's kind of like a staff augmentation for a limited amount of time, say 12 to 15 months. And we start off with a done for you service. We transition to doing the work with you, and then we transition to where it's done by the church itself. And by that, I mean, it's not just necessarily the pastor doing it, but that there are people trained within the church that can carry on these ministries. So there's a lot that goes into this, hence the price point. One thing I want to emphasize is that this is not all fees that would be paid to 5 More Talents. Part of this is actually going to online ads. So I just want to look at what we were thinking as far as how this would look for July to September. So there's an evangelism component and an outreach component. So the evangelism, the goal for July through September would be to assess and evaluate some evangelism training materials to be used then later on in the next 12 months to train people in the congregations in evangelism. Then on the outreach side, we would start online advertising to build awareness of the church in the local community. So if you're interested in this offer, it's limited to 2 churches starting in July. Basically, what we're saying is that we would waive this $600 for the first month that you would pay to 5 More Talents. All you would need to pay for the first month is something directly to probably Facebook is the online advertising platform we would recommend, but we could discuss the details of that and consider the possible benefits of YouTube as well. It wouldn't have to be exactly $600, but if the church is in a season where you're just trying to raise a lot more awareness of your existence in the community, then investing in online ads is a proven way to do that. And you can start seeing new people contacting your church basically within a week or two, in my experience. So if you're interested in this, we do have one other church. We have a limit on 2 churches, and we have one other church that has expressed a significant degree of interest in this. They're still discussing it. But if you are interested in this, then you can contact Laura, and we can discuss those details with you. If you want to, you would need to sign up by July 12th to take advantage of this offer. And then it's going to basically close up, and the next time we might offer this will probably be October at the earliest, prior to the full planned launch of this at the beginning of 2025, what we're currently thinking. And Laura put her email in the chat. All right. Oop, I need to say one other thing. Our next webinar, hopefully next week, instead of coming to this webinar, you will be at some sort of 4th of July Independence Day. If you try to come to this webinar next week, there's no one else going to be here. So our next one is going to be Thursday, July 11, and we're going to start looking at social media and YouTube as part of sermon publishing. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming today.
Thank you, Dan.
It's great to see you all again. Hope you all have a great week.
All
Thanks.
right. You
Bye.
too, Dave.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye.